Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at Afrifursa. My name is Tapfuma. I'm the founder of Afrifursa, and this is actually our first diasporan feature. And I've got with me on the line here Dr. Olutoyin Oyelade. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us, Dr. Olutoyin. Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you doing today? It looks nice and bright where you are.
Absolutely. I'm doing great, and I thank you for having me over.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Olutoyin, as you know, and I'm just going to call you Olutoyin instead of Dr. Olutoyin, if that's okay.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. So, as you know, Afrifursa is an initiative to help people basically understand the opportunities in Africa across all sectors. It's an area that I found, having worked in the space, in the Canada-Africa space specifically, similar to you, that there's just a lack of exposure and understanding. So I've got you on the line. You are a mover and shaker. And maybe I'll just say this in terms of how I was introduced to Olutoyin for everyone who's listening. I had met with MP Rob Oliphant. So he's a member of parliament, our federal or national parliament here in Canada. And I'd met with him a couple of years ago when I'd first come back to Canada, and I was trying to understand what's happening in the Canada-Africa space. And he said that there is an organization called Friends of Africa run by a Dr. Olutoyin Oyelade, and that I should connect. So that was what really started, I suppose, our conversation. Then I got to meet you, and I've attended some of your forums. And so my first question is, Olutoyin, you are really dynamic. You do a lot of things. You are the co-founder or founding partner and CEO at NVCAP Corporation. And you're also the founder of CASA Foundation, Afro Investors, Friends of Africa. How would you describe your core passion?
Well, let me first start by saying to you, Tapfuma, that I'm so thankful that you even started Afrifursa at all. One, because of the core objectives that you've reiterated over time, and since I got to meet you, and it's heartwarming to see that panning out today into what is now known as Afrifursa. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for having me on your program. What is my core passion? I would just generally say it's investment. My core passion is investment, and when I say investment management. I love investment a lot. That's just my passion. And when I say investment, I'm not just referring to the capital investments in ventures, investments in businesses, and so on. I'm actually talking about the general ambit of investments, and so that's why we have you have the investment in people, investment of your treasures and talents and skills and competencies that you've garnered over time. And so that's why I say, generally speaking, my core passion is investment. Primarily, my focus area is actually investment in real estate, and that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. So that's my primary area of skills and competencies and all of that. I started out actually as an investment banker way back in almost 23 years ago now. Back in Africa, the Intercontinental Group. And so I've actually actively practiced investment management over the years. And it was actually during that period that I became the group treasurer of that institution called Intercontinental Group in Nigeria, Ghana, and the United Kingdom. And so I was a group treasurer of that entire group with responsibility for all the treasury activities, fixed income trading, and all of that, investment banking. For that particular institution before I came over to Canada, actually, a few years ago. And so that's because I have actively been involved in the investment banking sector. It was just a logical, it was just a logical progression for me to dabble into investment again, now settling in Canada. And so that's why we started INFCAP. INFCAP simply is investment capital. And so in Canada, I started investing in real estate, the real estate sector, and actively with a lot of partners. But, because we started that company about 5 years ago, actually, So that's actually what, created Entrepreneurs Point as you know it today. So it's one of the investee companies of InfCap Corporation. And so InfCap Corporation is a regulated firm and duly registered under the Corporate Affairs Commission in Nigeria. So the partners are actually based out of Nigeria. And then in Canada also, we are duly registered and supervised. So the whole idea then is to maximize the skills and the competencies that you gathered over the years, and then the partnerships that you have around you. So truly we were able to identify a few of the people we had worked with back in Africa, actually now resident in Canada. And so we decided to come together as partners, and then in the United States. And so we started receiving funding. So InfCap would raise capital and then look for viable commercial real estate opportunities to invest in. So we invest in commercial real estate. And so Entrepreneurs Point is one of the very few ones that we've done in Canada, but we have several other ones in Africa. So that's the primary objective. It was when we dabbled into the commercial real estate sector here in Canada with purchases like Entrepreneurs Point, which has now become a co-working space and an incubator for entrepreneurs. We started out actually investing primarily as a commercial investment property. It was much later that that investment property became Entrepreneurs Point as things unfolded, and I'm going to share a bit of that with you as time goes by. As you mentioned, we started with CASA Foundation, but that's a non-profit organization, and having actively engaged and conferred with a lot of Africans in diaspora there, and a lot of government officials in Canada looking for a middle point and a platform where people could actually actively debate and discuss the infrastructure deficits of Africa, and looking to find ways to mitigate some of the risks that a lot of investors have identified over the years as to why they would just not dabble into investing in Africa and things like that. We created the CASA Foundation to address those gaps so that people could actually come around the table and have a platform where they could actively discuss the investment opportunities, infrastructure opportunities in Africa, and have a platform where they could actually share their concerns with the active players in Africa. And so that's why you found the Friends of Africa inviting over the leaders, the movers from government and private sectors in Africa over to the Friends of Africa, because we found that it would be a platform where they could actually share their developmental agenda on one hand, and where these potential investors on the other hand could actually tell them the reasons, the risks, the reasons why they just will not touch some of those investments that we know are viable opportunities. And so that's actually what Friends of Africa sought to do at the beginning when we started in 2011. And it was in the process that we found in the discussions, from government, from private sector, both, across the two continents, that we found that there was a need also to create a platform also, like the Entrepreneurs Point, like an incubator, where you could actually now groom, mentor, sponsor, and find partners, or create partnerships with small businesses, medium-sized businesses and organizations that were looking to do business in Africa, but did not have a go-between, like a connector, that could actually facilitate such interactions. So you see the logical progression of things from starting from CASA Foundation, creating the platform called Friends of Africa, and then finding the gaps even within those platforms, because it wasn't just enough for you to have a conference, a summit once a year. People forget again, and then they come back the next year to confer. But then you had to do this on a consistent basis. It had to be consistent. It had to be ongoing, a platform where people could actually discuss actively and where they could come to without needing to call governments across Africa to look for business opportunities. A place where they could come to not only to find such pieces of information required, but also to be trained, to be mentored, and also to facilitate their journey of looking for capital outside of a single conference. So that's how logically, we progressed and dabbled into all of these parts of the businesses, because the need from one would create the creation of the other. So in a nutshell, that's actually what we've done so far.
I love how it's such a virtuous cycle, how through your exposure and experience here, you've been able to find these gaps and create these platforms to actually fill it. And I think it's amazing when you talk about investment, when you define it as being broader than just finance, but investing in youth and in women. I know that's a big one for you as well. I'd love to hear about that in a minute. But the thing that's interesting for me is, as we talk about the infrastructure gap in Africa, we're sitting in the middle of COVID-19. You're there in your home office. I'm here at my home office. And, there's so much restriction around movement, around business. And a lot of our supply chains have been affected. So, Africa as well is poised for growth with the whole continental free trade area, which is meant to facilitate infrastructure development and many other fundamentals. So I guess my question to you is, someone who's constantly working on bridging North America, Canada specifically, and African markets as far as infrastructure investment, do you see any opportunities coming out of the current climate, the COVID-19 climate, to increase or to further the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. The opportunities, huge opportunities exist. And I say so, as you rightly mentioned, we have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement coming into force. It's been signed. And so everybody's excited because that's going to be one of the largest platforms to trade, right? And we know how that came about. As Africans, we know that the huge gaps in infrastructure, the continent itself is almost known as the continent of deficits, so these huge gaps have actually created this. And so with excitement, we're looking forward to the execution of the goals and the purposes of the AFTA. However, talking about COVID-19, indeed, huge gaps, coming back to that, huge gaps have been created, supply chains, logistic providers and suppliers and so on. So what are the opportunities? First, to my mind, I would say the opportunity of expanding and fully establishing the digital economy in Africa, the digital economy. The digital economy, by that I mean also the e-commerce platforms, the e-commerce platforms, the remote way of working remotely, virtual offices and virtual trades and things like that. Ensuring that the trades that we go into now are fully executed and concluded, our transactions virtually. It will be part of the digital economy. That needs to be fully activated and enabled with the right regulatory frameworks and policies backing it up and put in place by the various governments of Africa, in the African countries. I think that must come and it must be driven by policy. As you well know, you frame and shape policies around what you want people to do. And so it will be a call out actually to our leaders in Africa that the time is now to ensure that some of the things that we used to do, carrying paper and all over the place, it's now a fully cashless society in some parts of East Africa, where you don't need to carry loads and loads of bags to make purchases, heavy purchases. And so this is actually, and the paperless community transactions that facilitate transactions right here where we do business from has shown you that a lot can be achieved even without seeing anybody. We've seen situations here where even banking transactions that people would ordinarily tell you can never be concluded outside of a banking hall. We've concluded several virtually, signing documents, having calls like this to discuss your options. Maybe you are looking to invest even in the stocks market, in the capital market, in mutual funds, whatever it is. Everything is concluded online. This is a huge opportunity for Africa to switch to technology, use technology, the opportunity of technology to achieve the advancement rapid advancement that we've been looking for. Because, technology it cuts across continents. It facilitates all transactions, and it ensures that people that you actually need to reach in a timely fashion, you do so immediately. We've not been able to travel. We've been cooped up in our home offices and in our bedrooms, doing businesses across thousands of miles. As you well know, we have some of these investments portfolio back in Africa, Nigeria specifically. We've not been able to travel in the last 4 months. I've only been out of the country since February of this year. I haven't had an opportunity to visit some of those locations to do anything. Yet, the people on ground, weekly meetings, monthly meetings, you're able to have that. Some of the transactions need to be signed online. If the private sector and small businesses are able to do that effectively, the governments need to immediately enforce, enable, and shape policy, put policies in place to align with this new way of doing things. To my mind, this is the new normal, actually. A lot of people say, oh, well, we won't take it as the new normal. I say, you have to take it as a new normal, otherwise you become extinct. The idea is, if your active partners have already embraced the new normal, but you're still waiting to actually see things change when you can go out and all of that, then you'll be left behind. For any continent that will not be left behind from now on will embrace digital technology. I mean, the techie way of doing things, the larger digital economy, and establishing e-commerce across all their platforms, so that whether it's a company registration, whether it's business registration, whether it's to facilitate letters of credit and so on, all the things that we regularly would walk into a bank to initiate trade with China, to initiate trade with our trade partners across the continent, all of these have to be digitalized. And that's the only way forward, to my mind, because it's already been enabled around here. I can quickly cite for you an example of one or two things that we've done back at Entrepreneurs Point. Earlier on this year, around February, we had a client come to us because remember I mentioned that we are also an incubator. So we have an incubator for entrepreneurs. And so a couple of lecturers, professors from Rising and some other universities, including myself, we teach business and leadership. How to start up your business, how to raise capital, how to raise funding for your startup venture. And so this is what we teach, a 6-week class. What we had to do in February, when somebody approached us, one of our clients, requesting to train a cohort of about 40, we just mentioned, fix the date, and then we had people register. But we never anticipated the COVID-19. And because we had been paid for this particular class, the package, the session, and all the lecturers were ready, we had the materials ready to go, we had to switch to the online version of that. More importantly, because obviously Rising already had the platform readily prepared. And so it was easy for us to, borrow a leaf from what was already in place. And then we just replicated that. And then we were able to teach these students. Would you believe that since February, we have had 9 different sessions, subsequently, since that initial one. Now, these are opportunities that we may have considered them in the past, but we thought it might take an arm and a leg to execute, to build the platform, to execute it, or even to get interested parties, clients, other clients, to become interested in such an opportunity. But for COVID, we would possibly never have even pursued immediately. Yes, it wouldn't have been on the front burner. It would have been one of the initiatives that possibly you would consider for the 3rd quarter or the 4th quarter of a year. But this was facilitated because of the pandemic. Now, I see that as a huge opportunity for us because not only have that fully engaged us, I mean, all our staff, we actually had to get other people, all hands on deck, to ensure that those particular programs were fully executed for us. The reason we had to do that also because they looked at the fact that we're not only scholars that have maybe studied business and leadership and were able to teach it, but we're also practitioners. And so how did we get Entrepreneurs Point to the point where it is today? And how have we been able to manage businesses across continents, even with all of this? So these are some of the things, practical steps that we teach in classes like that.
Fantastic.
And the goal is to actually build entrepreneurs and prepare them, not just as theoreticians and entrepreneurs that studied entrepreneurship in the university, but people that can actually go into the field and practice entrepreneurship. This, I believe, can be replicated in the government sectors in various African countries.
Fantastic. And congratulations on getting those sessions up and running and having an impact. It's amazing to see how this COVID-19 has created that environment, that enabling environment, perhaps that you're referring to, which is so important. And I think one of the amazing things is that you're giving opportunities to young Canadians to participate in this. And I suppose because it's virtual, a lot of these platforms, can people from anywhere participate in them?
Absolutely, anywhere.
Okay.
Anywhere.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So we have a group coming up from Cameroon. It's a business summit. It's a business group, and they have their summit on an annual basis in Cameroon. And so last year we were invited to speak, but obviously this year there's really nothing. There's no way to travel over, and so it's been arranged as a platform where people can learn and share.
And this is an example, an incredible example of the space, the Canada-Africa space, and the opportunities that are still so untapped there, and how now might be the most opportune time for people who, those of you who are watching right now and others in our networks, to really jump on the opportunities that Africa presents. 54 countries, thousands of languages spoken, it's some of the fastest growing economies in the world, really intelligent and innovative people, and partners that are willing and ready to work with you on the other side. And that's what you're exemplifying, Olutoyin, through some of your work. So we're coming to an end here, coming to a close of our short interview, our snippet. You're just a wealth of knowledges and experience. There's so much we haven't tapped into yet. But we are going to have, your website is below. If you look in the comments below, you will see that, and people can follow you there. Where else can they follow you, Olutoyin?
They can follow me in the social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, and it's just simply Olutoyin Oyelade on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. I'm actually more of a LinkedIn person, actually. But then I'm on all those platforms because of the book and because of some of the women events. A lot of them are on Facebook, so I'm on those platforms as Olutoyin Oyelade. And then the CASA Foundation is also there on all the platforms as CASA Foundation. Entrepreneurs Point is on all of those platforms also as Entrepreneurs PP. And they can also send us an email at info@casafoundation.ca.
Okay, fantastic. So our last question, because the thing about Afrifursa is that there's a few themes. So one of them is diaspora, which we're dealing with now. But another one which is critical is municipal or city resilience. So we have a big focus on cities. And so my last question to you would be, in terms of your favorite city for architecture across Africa, and we've got, such a variety of architecture, right?
Absolutely.
What is your favorite city in Africa in terms of architecture?
I perhaps you didn't know that my husband is an architect, actually, by profession.
Well, I didn't know that, but it makes sense. You've got the real estate market cornered between the two of you.
He's one of our partners. So he's an architect, a chartered architect, actually. And so it will be Joburg, actually, Johannesburg. That's in South Africa.
Yes.
And that's not the only one, but I say it in that order. It's Joburg, Cape Town, Nairobi, Lome, and Accra, in that order.
Wow.
All of those cities resonate deeply with me because of one experience or the other. Cape Town, particularly because of its beaches and, all those, the beaches, and the fact that you actually have a sense of connection once you feel like you're at home, being a Nigerian originally. Obviously, Nairobi, a lot of tourism and so on.
Yeah.
Nairobi actually sells, Lome sells a lot of Nigerian food around its hotels. around the beaches also, but you never feel lost because there are a lot of checks, a lot of places where you can always feel like you've connected with home around Lome and Accra for obvious reasons. A lot of history. You can actually, just think back and go back in time to relieve, what our forefathers went through. Once you get into Accra and you're looking at all those sites, I really like the architecture, the way they preserved all of those in Accra, all those centers where you can visit and actually see exactly what people went through. And it becomes, it resonates so deeply with you. You take a decision and make a choice to be different and to fight to ensure that you and the generations coming after you never face what those guys had to face. I think that's why some of the cities resonate with me.
Well, thank you so much. Some of those cities really resonate with me too. And I see you had to be fair to all of them. You couldn't single out one.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Dr. Olutoyin Oyelade, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And for those of you who are watching and want to get in touch, remember, you'll see in the comments below how you can follow Dr. Olutoyin Oyelade. Thank you and take care. That's it from us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.